Hey guys, welcome to yours truly, Alison, a 20-something-year-old's perspective. Let's get into the video. Today I'm going to be talking around the subject, what my past relationships have taught me. I'm going to be doing a relationship series. It's so exciting and it's going to be filled with topics of different types of relationships, family, friendship, and of course, intimate relationships. I'm really excited just to unpack because it's something that impacts us all. I'm excited for what we're going to be able to reflect on and the knowledge and the tools that we're all going to gain along this journey. The first thing that my past relationships have taught me is that, number one, nothing prepares you for being in a relationship than actually being in a relationship. A few years back when I was 21, I did a blog post and I had written 21 life lessons that I've learned in 21 years. And one of my lessons that I was so passionate about, I was passionate about all the lessons, but one in particular was that a bad friend equals a bad partner. And I felt like that was just going to be inevitable. If you're a bad friend, you're going to be a bad partner. When I started to get into relationships, when I had my experiences, I realized that it wasn't that simple. I saw that the difference in the intimacy with the relationship impacted the way that you are able to show up. It sounds obvious, but when you're really unpacking it, you see how people can show up well in intimate relationships, even better than they do in friendships or even with their family friends, because it's a different type of love. And I always thought that they were very similar, and I think there is a basis that is similar, but I realized that they are so different. And I'll give you an example. I realized being in a relationship that I am somebody who likes to process. I like to have time on my own when I feel upset. I don't like to just go in and start having a conversation trying to fix things most of the time, because I need time to sit with my emotions, process them, make sense of them, and then work on that after I've got some sort of clarity within my emotions, right? I realized when you're in a friendship relationship, sibling relationship, there is a cooling off period, because it's like we don't necessarily have to do things together. Like let's use the friendship level, for example. If my friend upsets me, right, there's a lot of time that I spend not seeing them or not with them or not around them. So it's easy for me to get over and even sometimes forget what I was even upset about. So the next time that I see them, it's almost like it was non-existent. You have to like choose to interact with your friends, whether that's by phone or by text, right? Or actually seeing them somewhere. But it's like, if your friend does something to upset you, that's something small. It's not a big deal. It's not like something that needs to be unpacked. You have the time to get over that. By the time that you see them next time, it's almost like it didn't happen. It's almost non-existent just because of the time that you've spent apart from them, right? When it comes to family, for example, it's a bit difficult. Now they're in your house. So it's like, if a family member annoys you or they do something that makes you uncomfortable or something that you don't like, it's like, yeah, okay, it's a bit closer, but there's still a cooling off period. You might go to work, you might take a walk, you might go in your car and drive off, right? When you have a partner, you are always communicating with that person. You're always kind of like around that person in some capacity, like in a relationship or like in a marriage. You're always like interacting with that person. So very quickly you realize the turnover time for when you next have to speak to them or when you next have to deal with them is shorter than all the other relationships, just because of the proximity. If you're like me and you're somebody that needs time to process, you need time to think through your emotions, you realize that when you face the person again, you've kind of not dealt with what happened before. And so it's like now you have to quickly deal with it, or now it has to be a thing that's discussed. And that's a new level of emotional maturity that I had to learn in that capacity. With a deeper level of intimacy, it also makes you fight harder. Like the hurt that comes from those relationships is even harder. At the end of the day, though there is a basis of friendship in partnership, like marriage, of course, it is not the be all and end all. There is a level of duty and obligation. The second thing that I learned from my past relationships is that it's easier to settle than you think. Now, I'm somebody who always had my standards. I've always had very high standards for somebody who I would take seriously or somebody who I could actually date, right? I've always had high standards for myself. I know what I want and I know what I don't want. When you're actually in a relationship, you realize that your yes and your no is going to be put to the test. And you see, I remember I was a teenager and I came across this video by Tony Gaskins. He's this YouTuber, he's this like relationship expert. And I remember him saying something very profound. He said, even the good guy will test your limits. Even the good guy will see what they can get away with. I feel like to paint a picture, what he's saying is not just like people have an agenda, somebody is trying to pull one over you all the time. But the fact is, we're all flawed people, we're all imperfect people. And there are some times when we act not in the best interest of this person that we call friend or family or partner. And so those parts are inevitable, and there is always an option for the other person to confront that, to have the hard conversation, to actually face it head front. And that doesn't mean that you're a bad person, but that's just the nature of relationships. I feel like my experience in relationships really showed me that the standards that you have for yourself, the things that you say you don't stand for, will be tested. And it's very easy when you're actually in the situation and you're clouded by emotion and feeling for this person and like, oh, could this be something special, and you have that connection and you have that chemistry, it's easy to be blinded by things that you shouldn't be overlooking. When it comes to red flags, you know, it's easy to say, oh, red flag this, red flag that, oh, I could have seen that from a mile away. Yeah, it's easy to see it from a mile away when you're not in it and you're not blinded by that emotion. So I saw how easy it is. If you are not vigilant, if you are not careful, you can easily let your standards slip. And it's only when you exit the relationship that you're looking back thinking, why did I let that slide anyway? I thought I was stronger than this, you know? And it's like, you have to be in the situation at times for that weakness to be exposed. It goes back to the first lesson that I learned. Nothing prepares you for being in a relationship like being in one. Sometimes you have to be in a certain situation for you to actually be tested. Like, there is going to come a situation where you have to prove that you mean what you say. It's similar to healing. Sometimes you think, I've gone past that, I've moved past that, I'm no longer dealing with that, or I no longer have that insecurity. And then you're exposed to the same thing, and then you realize like, oh my gosh, why am I handling it this way? Why do I feel like this? Like, I thought I'd moved past this. You had moved past it to some extent, but you just hadn't been exposed to that very thing, that place, that environment, that person for a long time for you to be tested. That's the point that I'm saying, that a relationship will test you. As much as having your yes and your yes, like, you need to have that grounding. I need to know my limits. I need to know my boundaries. I need to know what I stand for. I need to know what it is that I'm looking for. Like, I can't be aimless in my relationships, right? I need to have a standard that I'm aiming for, but I should know that it's going to be tested. And when I fail, I can look back and I can think, well, where did it go wrong? Why did it go wrong? What was the need that I was trying to get fulfilled in that moment that I overlooked something that was more important? The next lesson that I've learned in my past relationships kind of like adds on to the first one of it's easy to settle than you think. Another thing that I learned is that you want to love somebody as much as they love you. This one is a lot to unpack, but what I will say is, as a woman, I was taught growing up, you need to have certain standards for yourself. This is how you carry yourself. This is the type of person that you are. Like, being very intentional, like everything from a girl's perspective, we're socialized with a very protected mindset. Like, you need to be careful. You need to be vigilant. You need to be aware. Like, you are precious. You always have that in your mind. You always have your standards. You always have that awareness. I should have said at the beginning, this tip is for women. And you always have that in the back of your mind. I need to protect myself because I'm precious. My heart needs to be treasured, type of thing. And then you get to the point where you realize that there are men that will meet those standards, right? So after the testing, you realize, oh, there are actually men that will meet that. It's not just something I'm thinking of in my head. It's not just something that to be imagined. Like, there are men that will meet these standards. There are men that have the capacity to love me in that way. Like, you see it in front of your eyes, but then you realize you don't have the capacity to love them, or like, you don't want to love them in the same way that they love you. Like, some people call it the spark, the thrill, whatever it is, like biochemical reaction, the brain, yada yada, that you're feeling. That capacity to love someone, to be able to love somebody, is a privilege. Being in love with someone, or to put somebody else first in any type of relationship, is a blessing in itself. To actually be able to give love is the biggest blessing, if not more, than being able to receive love. And so when you're looking for a relationship in any type of capacity, you don't just want somebody who ticks all the boxes and yeah, they do this, they do this, they do that, but do I have the capacity to love them well? Do I have the capacity to meet their needs well? Our needs are always changing. We're always growing. They're always evolving. The person that they are now, imagine they would never change. Imagine I would never change. Do I have the capacity, the desire even, to love them well? Because that person also deserves somebody who will love them well. And the last thing that I have learned in my past relationships is that God speaks so differently. I feel like I didn't actually understand the capacity to the way that God speaks to me until I had to experience it. There was a time when I was dating someone, and how God told me to leave this person was like voice in my head. Every time I say that, I think I sound crazy, but like a voice in my head. And another time when I was in a different situation with somebody else, how God told me this isn't the one was through a dream. Another time, how God told me to leave this person was in a knowing, right? And so I realized very quickly that I couldn't box God. I couldn't decide that because God had spoken to me in one way the other time, and I knew what he was saying, that he was going to do it again the next time. God is going to stretch your ability to hear him. He is going to stretch the way in which you are able to receive from him. You cannot limit God to what you've seen him or how you've seen him do it before. God is always speaking, and he speaks in different ways. It's not just through my inner knower, it's through other people, it's through dreams, it's through confirmations, it's through signs, prophecy, right? There's so many ways, through opening the Bible and reading, and you know this scripture, the context is different. This was set thousands of years ago and you're reading it and you know that God is telling you something about your situation now. That's happened to me as well. So you can't box God. When you're seeking confirmation about a relationship with God, if you're a Christian, that would be your base, and that would be somebody you would want to confirm a relationship before it gets too serious. When you're seeking God for confirmation on your relationship and the way in which you guys should go, or if this is somebody that you should take seriously, be open, be receptive, have that attitude of like, I'm not going to stop praying, I'm not going to stop seeking God until I have a yes, until I have a no. And also, bonus thing I learned in relationships, God's silence does not mean his approval. So if I ask God, is this guy the one for me, and I've already made my decision, or I'm already obsessed with him, or I'm already clinging to him, God's silence in that situation when I'm praying, right, knowing in my heart that I've made my decision, or knowing in my heart where I'm swaying or what I want his answer to be, God's silence or me not being able to hear God does not mean that he's approving. God is more than capable of giving me a clear and direct answer. He's only the God of the universe. Why would he be silent? Why would he be giving me confusing answers? He just wants me to press in deeper. God's silence is not his approval. We learn that in Romans chapter 1. There are times when you have chosen your idol, you have clung to your idol so much that God just hands you over to it because he's not going to compete. He's a jealous God. Never box God. God can speak to you in many different ways about the same situation. Will keep on teaching you to hear him, and don't stop seeking God until you have your confirmation, until you have your answer. Well, thank you guys for joining me on yours truly, Alison, a 20-something-year-old's perspective. Be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Follow me at my Instagram at yours truly, Alison. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.